Welcome, everybody. Today we're going to talk about a little bit about the Tropical Conservation Biology and Environmental Science graduate program, and then how, if you're interested, how to put together a competitive application. But before we start, I want to introduce you to our leadership team. I'm Dr. Tracy Wigner. I'm a professor in marine science. I'm currently the director of the TCBES graduate program. And now we have...
I'm Jonathan Price. I'm the incoming associate director of the graduate program, and I'm in the Department of Geography and Environmental Studies.
And then next up,
I'm Becky Ostertag. I'm the outgoing associate director of the TCBES program, and I'm in the biology department here at Hilo.
and then Lisa.
And I'm Lisa Finelli, and I'm the coordinator of the internship track.
So as we go through the presentation, if you have any questions, just raise your hands and we'll answer it as we go along.
Oh, there's a question in the chat.
Do you prefer participant? It's nice to see faces. There we go. So welcome to the TCBES graduate program. If you want to learn more specifics about the program, please visit our website. Most of the questions that you probably have, you can find the answers to on the website. It covers lots of different things, so I encourage you to go to it to see if you can find the answers there. So the program purpose and goals is to provide graduate training and education in conservation biology and environmental science to people who have natural science degrees, but we also have some people who join us from social science, arts, all different sorts of things. And we use the extraordinary biological gradient of Hawaii Island to study conservation and environmental science. We have different biomes, different rainfall gradients, all sorts of tremendous terrestrial, freshwater, and marine ecosystems, as well as the indigenous culture of the place. It really provides a very interesting place to live and to do science. We have 2 tracks for the program, and we'll provide more details on those as we go through the presentations. We have a thesis track and also a professional internship track. So the mission of the program is to foster knowledge of theory and techniques of conservation biology and environmental science. We promote scholarly activities in marine and terrestrial environments that enable students to pursue careers in research and also natural resource management. And like I said before, we utilize the extraordinary biological gradients of our island. So our program began in 2004. So in about a year and a half from now, we will be celebrating our 20-year anniversary. We've had 210 graduates to date, about 24 students per year. And now with the professional internship track, that 24 students is almost divided evenly between the thesis and the professional internship track. We have 45 faculty across 4 colleges who are involved in our program, and then numerous adjunct and affiliate faculty from nonprofit organizations, county, state, and federal agencies as well. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the different tracks. So the track that I'm going to talk about first is the thesis track. There are some similarities between the tracks, but I want to describe each of them separately. So for the thesis track, it's 30 credits of coursework, and then you're doing a research thesis of original research. So for this track, you come in with an advisor. So when you apply, there's someone who is agreeing to take you on as their graduate student. And this track really prepares you for technical research positions, or if you are considering going on for a PhD. We have some examples of our early graduates. Randy Tubal, she worked here on the Wailuku River. She is now works for the Department of Health in their non-polluted runoff branch. John Burns, he is now actually an associate faculty member in the Marine Science Department, and he worked on corals down at Waiapai. Lucas Mead had been, he worked on Hilo Bay, and then was the Hilo Analytical Lab Manager, went to work for Hawaii County Department of Planning, and now works for Kamehameha School's Marine Science Education Center down in Keaukaha. Troy Sakihara, he did a project looking at alkaline ponds, and he now is an aquatic biologist at the Hawaii Department of Aquatic Resources. And then Rebecca Most, she did work over in Kiholo and Koloko Honokohau, and she is now a Hawaii Island Marine Program Manager for the Nature Conservancy. So these are some of the things that people worked on and the kinds of jobs that they have now with their TCBES degree. The second track is the professional internship track. It has a little bit more coursework, so 36 credits, and you also do a final paper. So it's the professional internship track version of the thesis. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. And this track prepares you, prepares people to get that foot in the door to working in conservation environmental science. So you do an internship with maybe an agency that you're looking to develop a career with, and you do 600 hours of intensive work with them in training you to become a conservation professional. And some examples of this, John Flint, he did his internship at Volcanoes National Park. He then went on, once he graduated, to work at Koloko Honokohau National Historic Park. Maya Gudani, she did an internship with both the Nature Conservancy, Three Mountain Alliance, and Koloko Honokohau. So she kind of pieced together 3 different experiences. Kelsey Keister, she did an internship for Keikaiola Marine Mammal Center. Vanessa Zapeta, she did an internship with NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory. She has gone on to do a PhD at Cook University in Australia. So how to apply to the program? So you need to earn your baccalaureate degree. You have to, on your application, state which track that you're interested in, either thesis or professional internship track. You need to have a GPA of 3.0. That's not your overall GPA, but for the last 60 credit hours of your undergraduate degree. 3 letters of recommendations, and we no longer require the GRE. So a couple ways that you can pay for graduate school. We do have a few graduate assistant positions. These are working with our undergraduate departments to help teach their courses, or also to assist with the TCBES program. We have a scholarship through the Ha'oli Maloa Foundation. These are for students who graduated from a Hawaii high school who want to build a career here in Hawaii on conservation. There are also student fellowships that people can apply for. through different federal agencies, the U.S. Geological Survey, U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, National Science Foundation. A lot of our thesis track students are funded off of extramural grants through their thesis advisor. And then other people can apply for individual scholarships. We have a few students who, the one that seems to, that's pretty common is Kamehameha scholarships. So it does not qualify. I'm not sure what that means.
Oh, the internship track.
So the professional internship track doesn't exclude you from going on to a PhD if that becomes your interest. But most of the students going into that track don't necessarily have their hearts set on that at the beginning. They want to go work for some kind of organization, either a nonprofit or a governmental organization. But we have had students decide after completing the professional internship track and even through their internship that they wanted to continue on to PhDs and have been successful and being accepted into those programs. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit now about how to prepare your application materials.
Since we're at a natural breaking point, see if anyone has any general questions off the program. Anyone? Okay, all right, so on to how to apply. I have been on the admissions committee for the last 6 years, I guess, and so I've noticed different trends that have gone on with the admissions committee and seeing who our applicants are. And so we wanted to spend some time giving you guys some hints and some suggestions on how to prepare the best kind of application for our program. Okay, so some essentials. You're going to be applying online. It's an application that is for all the graduate programs at Hilo, so you would choose our program, and it's already available. And you are going to upload specific documents to that online system. What you need to upload is a curriculum vitae or a resume, a personal statement, and I'm going to go through those different documents in a minute. You are going to request 3 letters of recommendation from different people that know you well, and they are going to get an email from the system, and they're going to be prompted to send in the letter. Okay, so you don't get the letter from them. You tell them about our information, and they will get contacted to send in the letter. And then there's a $50 application fee that you have to pay to get in the system. If you're in the thesis track, so we asked also at the same process in your personal statement, you're going to talk about whether you want to be in the thesis track or in the professional internship track. If you're in the thesis track, you do need an advisor to sponsor you and say that they are willing to advise you, mentor you through your research project. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in this presentation, but that's something that goes up front in your application. If you're in the professional internship track, you don't need to have connected with a faculty member ahead of time. Lisa Canale, who's here, is our professional internship coordinator. She is your academic advisor, and then you will be working with an agency mentor, whoever you do your internship with. So you will have that dual pair. And don't forget to remind your letter writers to turn in their letters, and that they're going to be looking out for an email from that email right there. So we've had students in the past, everything's complete on their application, but they're missing one letter of recommendation. We're not allowed as the admissions committee to look at the application until it's complete. So it cannot hurt to remind your letter writers to get their letters in. And then you're going to have official transcripts from any of the institutions that you've attended. Those are going to be sent to hilograd@hawaii.edu. And those go to Shelby Iwamoto, who's on this call here. And she is your one-stop person for everything in the application process and can really help you. Did you want to add anything, Shelby, right now?
Nope, well, I think just the one thing on the
Oh, we
transcripts to
can't- for some
remember.
reason we can't hear you.
Oh, okay. Let me know when you guys have got the audio up.
We can't hear you, but that's okay.
Okay, I'll put my thoughts in the chat on Zoom, so everybody will get the same info.
Maybe she's typing it in the chat.
No, she's speaking,
Shelby said she's going to type it into the chat.
but it's because of the
Settings.
but I have to stop this, which I don't want to do right now. We'll do it when we have the question period. So someone else, if you be able to transfer to the thesis track, even if we got in the internship track, if you find an advisor to work with, yes, we have had students do that. We have had students come and change tracks. However, it is best if you do that in the first semester generally. Like you might get here and realize, hey, I'm in the wrong track. I really need to do this other track. The sooner you figure that out, the better it is, because your paths do diverge after the first semester. So,
So there's Shelby.
okay, and then Shelby's, yeah. Your transcripts do have to be official. Okay, let me talk a little bit more about if you're an international student, there are some additional requirements. Do we have any? We have one international student here. You're international as well. Okay, so at least two in this audience. So you have to have an independent transcript evaluation. If your baccalaureate institution is from an international institution, are you both Hilo students? So then you don't have to worry about that. If you're coming from another university in another country, sometimes they have a different grading system and those have to be evaluated. If you have a Hilo undergrad degree, you don't have that requirement. If you're a non-native speaker of English, you're required to take the TOEFL test here. And you have to have this international graduate student supplemental information form, confidential financial statement, that's also part of your application. So there's a little bit of extra work if you're an international student, but nothing that's too unusual, right? And there's the Hilo International Student Services can provide some additional support and information about funding opportunities. So there are funding opportunities. For example, if you're a Micronesian student, there's Micronesian Challenge Funds. So there may be additional opportunities from your country if you're an international student.
Click there's 5 questions.
Yeah, let's look at the chat. If you're in the UH system, you don't need the official transcripts. They will be requested. They will be pulled from STAR. If you want to do a PhD, sorry, you missed that. But if you want to pursue a PhD, you can still do the internship track and go to UH Manoa. We do have a student that is doing that right now, but it's a more traditionally in the thesis track to the PhD program, but it is not unheard of to do it from the internship track. So it depends. You would want to be involved in research, however, during your experience here, if you want to go on for a PhD, because a PhD is generally a research degree. Okay, any questions from you all? Okay. I think that's everything. Okay, so. Okay, let's talk about your, let's talk about, your CV or your resume. A CV is generally used in academic purposes, so you should sort of think about writing a CV at this point. A resume is generally a shorter document that's usually only 1 page, maybe 2 pages. Your CV at this point is probably not going to be longer than that anyway, because you're at a stage where you don't have that much experience. But a CV is something in academics that you build over your entire career. And this is just a template here on the right, just showing an example of what one might look like. It has important information that you want to include, of course, who you are and how to contact you. Some of the key sections on there, the one that people expect at the top is your education. What degree you've gotten from what school and what year. Usually it's enough information just to put your university education. Sometimes people will put on their high school education for Hawaii, but we don't generally need that for this kind of program. One more chat. Is there a page limit for the CV? There's no page limit for the CV. However, just in my experience, most of you will have like 1 or 2 pages just because you're in the beginning. You know, and by the time you get to our stage, it's like 10 pages. That's just how it is. Then the other sections that go on are this professional experience and research experience, and those could be the same thing. So you want to get at what your employment was, what kind of work that you've done. And it could be that you've done a lot of research, and you just make one section called experience or professional experience, or you could have separate sections. Maybe you've just done research in terms of classwork in some class projects, and you want to highlight that as a separate section, like a capstone project. Those are really important sections that we're looking at. What kind of experience do you have in these fields? Because we want to know that you're going to love it and you're going to want to be in conservation and environmental sciences, that you have the background to do this kind of work. So you've taken coursework, that's part of your transcripts that we'll look at, and then your experience. Now, at your case, you might not have a lot of experience. You might not have had many jobs. Maybe you haven't done that much. We also look at volunteer experiences. So if you volunteered often, or even just once for environmental organization, put that down there. That's valuable experience. If you love doing that kind of stuff, that shows us you have like the passion for this kind of environmental work. If you've done any presentations or publications, definitely include that, but not many of our students that are applying are going to have that kind of experience. A few do. If they've done a lot of undergraduate research, they may have gotten those opportunities. If you don't have those opportunities, that's okay. Just put down, that shows really where you're going and what you've done in the past, and so we can really highlight what your interests and passions are. So be as specific and detailed as possible. If you have any honors or awards, you can include that. And some of this optional information might be important to get a sense of who you are. Like if you speak another language, if you have skills in specialized software, you know how to use R or other types of software, GIS, that can be important information. You can put your interests or hobbies, but make it relevant to these kinds of work. We don't need to know about random hobbies, but if your hobby is like kayaking and hiking, that's relevant. And then you want to include your contact information for your references on your CV as well. Some mistakes that we see is not including your relevant experience. So think hard. Maybe you have not really had any jobs, but you've done some volunteer work. Include that. Okay, put that on there. Not including your relevant academic work. Maybe you haven't had a job, but you wrote a proposal in one class and you did a group research project in another class. And you have that experience in working with groups and going through the research process and writing it up or giving presentation. So include that stuff on there. Okay. And then also, this is a document that should be proofread, should be formatted nicely, easy to read. Show it to someone else, get someone else's feedback. Really, this is something you're going to keep working on for a long time. So you want it to look nice and be a good representation of who you are. Couple of questions here. What type of jobs are we looking for the application? Anything related that if you've worked in a research lab, you've been a technician, you've been had any kind of field work jobs, you worked in even a medical lab, any kind of experience that shows that this is the kind of fields you want to do. That's what we want to see. And any kind of science, you might have done different kind of science, but you have a science background because this is a degree that focuses on science. So we want to see that. Now, there are people that have applied that have not had a science degree as an undergrad, and they've gone back and taken extra coursework as a baccalaureate, for example, to build up their sciences. So that also will show up in your resume and as well in your personal statement. Okay, how far should it go back? Really probably just including your undergraduate years. We don't need to know like your high school and junior high, unless there's something like really significant. I don't know, maybe you were like the high school science fair champion, or something like, state champion or whatever. That, feel free to put that kind of stuff on there. But it's really focusing on your undergraduate time is what we're looking at.
Should you put in work that you may have done that wasn't science related? Because it might show like how responsible you've been while you were in school.
Yeah, you can definitely put some of that for sure. Like if you had a job at a cashier or any of those jobs, you can put those in there, but don't put those in there at the expense of not putting your science ones in there. But the science ones are the most important. If you have nothing to put in there besides those kind of jobs, that's fine. Just put what you've done. But you don't need to necessarily include everything in there if it's not really relevant to this kind of work. So yeah, you can, if you've been involved in conservation for 10 years, someone writes, yeah, you can definitely include that information for sure. We have all kinds of students applying, from traditional ones that have gone through their 4 or 5 years as an undergrad and they're applying right away now. And then we have non-traditional students. So if you have a more non-traditional path, be sure to include that kind of information. That's great. Okay, then the personal statement. Okay, this is a really, really important part of the application. And this is where some of our student applicants do fall flat. And so we want to try to give you some hints of what is the best here. It should be an essay format. And so it should follow a nice, essay where it's got a clean introduction, a body, main argument, and a conclusion. And it really should be about why you are a good fit for this program. Why do you want to pursue a master's degree in these fields, in tropical conservation biology and environmental science? How did you get here? Okay. So tell us your story. Why are you interested in this stuff? Did you grow up hiking and fishing and camping and you love it because of, things that your family did? Did you just come into this recently? You took one class that changed your view of the world. So we've had students that, they wanted to be doctors, and then they took an environmental science class and they realized they were on the wrong path. Your story is. We want to know why you care about stewarding the environment. What are your personal attributes that would lead you to be good in these fields? So tell us, why you love it and why you have that passion. Basically, show us where your passion is. Let us see your passion. Talk about your short and long-term goals. Now, you might not know what your long-term goals are forever, but just to the best that you can. Why do you want to get a master's degree? Because you don't need a master's degree to get some jobs in conservation. So you could go out and get a technician job, for example, without a master's degree. So why do you want this master's degree? What is it going to do for you? How is it going to help you in your career goals? And then specifically, we want to know why this program. Why do you want to be in Hawaii? Why do you want to apply to the TCBES program? Why do you want to be at Hilo? And those are really, really important to us. We want to find students that want to be here and love it here. And this is the reason for being. We want to have students that are just so excited about this place. They want to study here and be in this program. And so tell us why. So look at our website, talk to students, talk to faculty, talk to as many people to see if you can figure out, why this program. So it's like we're as evaluators on the admissions committee, we're looking, are you a good fit for our program? Of course, we're going to look at your grades and your letters, but we just want to know, does this person fit in with what we do here? And do they seem like they'd be a good fit? Some common mistakes are that the statements are really, really generic. Like, I want to save the world. Okay, why do you want to save the world? Who are you? We want to know more about you. And that is painful to write. I'm not going to tell you it's not painful to write. It is painful to write about yourself. But that's what you have to do, not just for our program, but for any program, is speak to who you are. Speak the truth of who you are and how you got here and where you want to go. And so talk to your friends, talk it out with people, write a lot of drafts, get someone else to read it. If it's just really generic, like I love the environment, I like plants, and we just don't see enough of you, that you don't stand out. You also want to talk about whether you want to apply for the internship or the thesis track and why. Are you really more research focused? That's more of the thesis track. Or are you more sort of experience focused, and that's more of the professional internship track? And yeah, being in Hawaii, if you already lived here, we have this tremendous aloha aina. We have this tremendous feeling about our environment, and we want to know that you have that too. If you live in Hawaii, share that with us. If you're outside of Hawaii, you need to spend a little time understanding the love that people have for this place, so that we can see that you will have that love when you get here and put that time and care and taking care of this place as much as we do of the people that are living here and giving back to this place. So that's kind of what we want to see. Okay, I'm going to pass it off to Jonathan Price. Does anyone have any other questions so far?
There was one about calculus.
I think calculus is not necessarily required.
Well, we don't have any required.
We don't have any set requirements. We have suggestions. So if you took it in NREM, you're probably fine, but you look at our website. The more math and science you have, the better, but we don't have any set requirements.
And I would probably say it depends on what you want to do when you get here. if you're gonna need that kind of math background. You
Yeah.
may or you may not, depending on what you do.
Yeah, depending on your kind of project, that really will determine that. How important is the 3.0 GPA requirement? Okay, if you have the 3.0 GPA requirement is our minimum. However, if you have less than a 3.0, like a 2.75, and everything else looks good, and we think you're a really good fit for the program, you can be admitted on a provisional basis, which means that you would be followed over the first year to make sure that you have the appropriate grades and you get the 3.0 grade point average necessary for our program. So that requires an extra step on our part to get a letter and get permission from the graduate council. And so those provisional students, you know, you have to kind of show yourself up even a little bit more if you don't have that 3.0 GPA. Another thing that you can do is you can take some post-baccalaureate classes and build that up for your GPA. So you can take online classes or classes after your undergraduate degree, because the last 60 credits are what count as your GPA. So we've had students that have had a lower GPA, spend some time taking some extra classes after they graduated, get their GPA up to that 3.0. So that's another possibility. Okay, I'm gonna pass it off.
So another of the parts of your application package is going to be your letters of recommendation. And the first thing is to consider, you know, who do you ask to write those letters? The most important thing is to have somebody you trust and who knows you in different ways and in different professional capacities. This could be a faculty member, it could be a former employer, an internship advisor. And oftentimes people will have kind of a combination of two or more, or one of each of those, or two faculty members and an employer. And the idea is that you want people who are able to speak to your qualities and specifically the things about you that are going to make you a great graduate student in our program. And so these are going to be hopefully very specific things they know about you. And so hopefully these are people that you know relatively well. Things that people are going to want to include are you personable, right? Do you get along well with people? Are you a good co-worker and team member? Can you work independently? That's great. Can you also work in groups? That's great, right? So being able to work either independently or in groups would be a great thing to see in a letter. Are you motivated? You really want to be there, right? Are you dependable? Are you showing up on time every time? Are you organized and good at troubleshooting? Good at writing, good at speaking. People may have specific examples of a talk you gave or an essay you wrote or a paper you wrote for a class. So examples are going to be a really great thing to have in those letters, things that are specific to you. Maybe just saying what your general potential is, saying, you know, somebody who may have known you over the course of years to be able to say, this person is really on a path. I think they've got a lot of potential going in this field. And creativity, being, you know, this person is really creative. Sometimes it's things that are little, you know, that special sauce, that je ne sais quoi that people have that makes them unique. And so these are the kinds of things that we really like to see in the letters. When you should ask someone to write a letter of recommendation as soon as you can. And there are good reasons for this. One is this gives you time, you know, to sort of work with them and get to know them if you don't already, so that they have some things to put into that letter. At the very minimum, you know, maybe 2 to 4 weeks, but hopefully this is somebody who you've known for a while and you can go to as soon as possible, so that it's sort of on their schedule, but also so they can be thinking about, oh, what's a good example of, you know, this person's work or something there's some quality they have. certainly, the priority application deadline is December 1st. And that deadline is there so that people can also be applying to financial aid at the same time, because that's going to help you make the decision. And also in some cases, advisors make the decision in terms of, is there going to be funding? Because we do have funding, as we've said, through our GA ships and through certain in-house scholarships. So that's why the priority deadline is somewhat early. Most students aren't going to see their letters of recommendation. They go directly to the program. So rather than going to you and you say, oh, wait a minute, but right? So this is why you want to make sure you've got somebody that you can trust. The recommendation letters, again, are submitted directly by the referees, by the people who are referring you. There are a few things that are common mistakes that we see. One is not asking people who know you as a student in the academic sense, right? So sometimes, and certainly people will have letters that are from employers in certain cases, but you're going to want one and hopefully maybe two of your letters are coming from people who were your professors and know your work in a detailed way. For example, you might have somebody, if you were in a big class with 200 people and the professor doesn't know you very well, that might not be the best person to choose, right? Because they may or may not know you in a very detailed way. Whereas a professor that maybe you worked on an internship with or had some other, more detailed interaction with, that's going to help you to have a good letter that's detailed and says a lot about you. And so this means this is a good time if you have some people in mind, take the time, get to know them, make sure they know you, so that they can put detailed things in those letters to make it as clear as possible, what your characteristics are. Another thing is oftentimes work-related references, and in some cases academic references, may not be very closely related to TCBES themes, right? So for example, you may have an academic reference, but it was from a class that's doesn't have a lot of relevance to TCBES. That's not to say you shouldn't use somebody like that at all. They may be able to speak that, hey, you're a really good writer, even though it was a class that wasn't, say, a biology class, you have these skills that are pertinent to the program. So even if it's a little bit on the outside of the program, making it relevant to the program is going to be the way to make that fit, right? It may be a work-related reference, right? Maybe you were a soccer coach in some capacity. That's not entirely related to TCBES, and so that may not be as useful. On the other hand, maybe on paper, on your resume, you had a job working in a fast food restaurant, right, when you were younger or something, and on paper it may not look terribly relevant to TCBES, but maybe your boss can tell a story about how you took over the recycling program. You were really creative in reducing waste. That may relate a little more to something you might do in TCBES. So overall, I would say the goal of the letters is to complement the kinds of things that you have that are just on paper. You got this grade, you had this work experience, and to tell the kind of person you are that got that grade, the kind of person who writes this kind of report, or who does this kind of work in a class, or who had done this kind of work during an internship or a volunteer activity.
It really looks like there's a question.
Oh, question. Okay. Are the letters due at the same date we submit our application? So technically, I guess maybe you can speak to the.
Sure. No, I can say a little bit about that application. So we have what's called a priority deadline, and that's December 1st. And that's after that, we start looking at the applications. If you are not ready December 1st and you want to apply later, you can still apply later, like January, February, maybe even March, but that's getting late. So after we look at or whoever gets in first, we're looking at those first, we're filling up our spots for the next year, and we take a cohort model, so we're taking 20 to 24 maximum students. So if the sooner you get yours in, the sooner you can be considered. Your letters, they might not come in on the same, they might not come in by December. If you're aiming for that December 1st deadline, they might not come in on the December 1st deadline. That's okay. But we will not review your application until all your letters are in. So, if somebody's holding you, if they're not turning it in, then they're holding you up. So, you want to get in touch with them. So it's not complete until we've received your letters, and also, as Shelby mentioned, that we receive your official transcript. So that can be another thing that can hold people up at certain schools. It can be a little bit of a process to get an official transcript. And yeah, we do the admissions we just do this once a year. So we only accept students for the fall semester, every fall. So this happens just once a year.
Good. Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, it's a very nuanced thing, obviously, because certainly people are getting their application materials in. Sometimes the letters trickle in a little bit later, and it can be a little tricky for the committee because we know we can only let so many people in. This person, doesn't have all their letters in, and so we can't fully assess their application. So again, the timing, the sooner the better, I would say. We have another question. How many people typically apply?
About 60 or 70.
Yeah, 60 or 70, about 3 times as many as we're going to let in. And again, we get a range of applications. Some of them aren't complete. Some of them are people who maybe aren't making the cut just in terms of GPA or this or that. Some of them are amazing applications. They're trying to get into the thesis track, but they just don't have a sponsor. That's a good maybe segue into another aspect of this, which is what to do before you apply. And again, now is the time to start doing this legwork ahead of time. If you're going into the thesis track, the single most important thing, and again, this is why we have amazing people who will apply, but if you can't get a good advisor and get somebody to basically sponsor you coming in, that can make even the best application maybe not get admitted. So that means going through the process of finding a thesis advisor. And the first thing to do is just background research. We have our website that lists all of the faculty in the TCBES program. And it's a wide range of people with a wide range of specialties and research topics that they cover. And so you want to go through that and sort of look through and say, okay, what do they study? What are they known for? What are they currently researching? Look at their website, look at, in some cases, their publications, do a Google search or a Google Scholar search. This gives you an idea of the kinds of papers that they're writing and the kinds of research that they do. And then think about the flip side of it, which is, how will you fit into their research group, right? If you have a background doing something in particular that you think, wow, my background, I had maybe a research job, assistant job, or maybe some kind of an internship or a volunteer experience that really prepares me and makes me a good fit for this research group. Some of these are going to be questions that are going to be harder to assess remotely, and we'll kind of talk about how to deal with that. But what are their expectations of their graduate students, right? You might ask if you can speak with some of their current or former students. And then also, this is a two-way street, right? So you want to think about what are your expectations for an advisor, right? Do you want, what do you want to get out of graduate school, right? Are you going down a particular career path, right? There may be details about that person that are going to work really well for you. How are most of their students funded? And this is again getting into the idea, particularly for the thesis track. You may need to have some research expenses covered, and this has been going to be covered in different ways. Sometimes it's by external grants that the advisor may already have. It may be other grants or funding that you look for as a student. And sometimes people will have funding ready to go, not all the time, depending on what their current research projects are. And again, this is a two-way street. So think about whether you both are a good fit. One of the most important things is to have a good student advisor relationship. And oftentimes these are going to be relationships that last, well beyond graduate school. I think any number of us still work with and rely on our advisors for different things, whether it was from graduate school or a master's, a PhD program, or a postdoctoral advisor. I think a lot of us, that's pretty standard, is this, you're starting, what's probably going to be a long-term professional relationship. That being the case, once you kind of get an idea of who those folks might be, you're going to want to contact those potential advisors. And again, the sooner you do it, the better, because it may, first of all, take a while for them to respond, but you may have follow-up questions and other kinds of things, and this is going to be a dialogue. So start by emailing them, sending a resume or a CV, and give specific details about your interests, right? The more specific you can be, the more likely they are to be responsive, right? So if you can say, I'm interested in doing a research project kind of in this area, and that happens to fit with what they do, they may be a little more responsive. Where if it's vague and you say, well, I'm interested in graduate school, that may not be interesting enough for them to, to take you on, not knowing your interests.
I'll get students say like, your work sounds so amazing.
Yeah.
And that's all they say. And I don't know what they mean, so I want.
No, they'll say, your work is amazing, and I'm a water person, and I want to study trees. Okay, they set this up to everybody.
Yeah. I'm looking for-
Yeah.
For
So-
people that are gonna be a good fit.
Yeah. So the more specific you can be, details about yourself, details about your interests. And again, this is also the kind of things that you're going to want in your statement anyway. So the more when you approach the advisor, you have those details, the better. Again, work towards going beyond email, right? You may say, I'm interested and here are my interests, and they write back and say, oh, okay, potentially this could be good. Set up a phone call or a Zoom meeting or something like that, so that you can actually have a real discussion. Sometimes people will meet in person. That's starting to happen again. And so there are times when people will actually visit the campus, or it may be somebody that a professor that you've seen around and maybe know a little bit, but you could approach them and actually meet in person. So there are different ways to do this. And again, I should say this is a two-way street, right? So you're interviewing them, but they're also interviewing you, right? It's both. So you're looking for a good fit. You're looking for a way, and I realize it's maybe blocking that last bit, right? You're looking for a good fit for them and a good fit for you. We do have a couple of questions here. Okay, Shelby answered a question. Okay, somebody's disconnecting early. Okay.
So another thing is, don't be too upset if someone if a faculty member writes back and they say, I'm sorry, I'm just not taking any new students now, or I have no funding now, I'm going on sabbatical. I mean, sometimes they just can't take you. And it's not necessarily because they don't like what you're doing or where you're from. Like, there's just all these different constraints. So it really has to be like the stars aligning to have the right fit at the right time.
And I've also had students, they contact a specific faculty member, and that faculty member doesn't respond to their 20 emails. And then I get an email saying, why don't they respond to me? And I'm like, I don't know. And then I just go, hey, you need to respond to the student. If you're not taking it, but just tell them, So it's not personal, but if someone isn't responding to like 20 of your emails, that's probably not a good sign that you're taking on a student.
And do you want to work with that person?
Yeah, that's.
Right.
If they're not that responsive, then that's probably, a sign.
Yeah, and sometimes people may already have 3 or 4 graduate students. They've got their hands full and just can't take somebody, or maybe they don't have funding at the time, and so it's not always a reflection of you. And so yeah, I think that's important. But when you do contact them and it seems like a good fit, the more discussion you can have, the better you can not just set yourself up to get into the program, but move the ball forward in terms of getting your research and your thesis project going. And again, things you can do, you can read their website, actually read some of their papers so you have something to discuss with them. Hey, I read this paper, I'm interested in this kind of research, and be able to have a more detailed discussion. Those are going to be things that are going to help you get to know your mutual interests.
And I was gonna say, one of the other things they're probably gonna ask you are like the questions you're gonna write your personal statement on, right? Why this school? Why me? What do you want to do with your life? They're gonna ask you all those questions. So it's good if you've already thought about that ahead of time and have some answers prepared.
Okay. So yeah, so for the thesis track, it's very much about identifying and getting to know and really connecting with an advisor. The professional track is a little bit different. So for the professional track, again, we have a very detailed TCBES website, and I would say that's going to be important to go to whichever track you're going to pursue. For the professional internship track, look at the website and see the past internships that students have had. They're listed on there. And the reality is, there's probably going to be an agency that people have worked with in the past that might interest you. So do some research about those agencies and nonprofits in Hawaii. One of the unique things about this island is that we have federal agencies, many different federal agencies, from the national parks to the Fish and Wildlife Service. We have state agencies like the Department of Aquatic Resources. We have nonprofit organizations like the Nature Conservancy and the Akaka Foundation and others. So we have many of these different kinds of agencies that have different roles, all of which, relate to TCBES in some way. So do some research about what those agencies do, where they have active programs, et cetera. And you might contact the coordinator of the professional internship track, which is Lisa Canali here, if you have questions, because we have a large number of agencies that we coordinate with. And if you're interested in a certain type of experience, it's very likely that one of those agencies is going to be able to provide something that is for you. And again, the internship track is very hands-on. It's all about practical experience. It's a little bit different than the thesis track, which is about pursuing research and working specifically with an advisor. And so the internship track really is well placed here on this island because we do have so many different possibilities. Okay. And again, the research agencies' websites, the TCBES seminar speakers and topics, these are things that are also listed on the site. And all of the past internships will be a really good way for you to get a sense of the kinds of things that people do, not just the agencies, but the kinds of activities they're engaged in. Okay. We do have a number of helpful links. I'll go ahead and leave this up here for a moment. For those of you who are out in Zoom land, you can take a screenshot of those if you need, and we'll also have these posted on the website. These are on the TCBES website as just general resources for applying to graduate school. So one of these is from Indiana University, graduate resources. One of them is from the Ecological Society of America journals, and these are some resources to help you sort of think about the process of applying to graduate school. And then the tropicalbiology.org, again, has some nice tips for applying to graduate school. And of course, setting aside the TCBES website, these other possible links, we have us as a resource. So you can contact any of us who have just been introduced to you here today. Dr. Wiegner, myself, Lisa Canali, our internship coordinator, Dr. Oscar Tag, who's the outgoing associate program director, and Shelby Iwamoto, who is the graduate division's admissions coordinator. She is going to be the one handling all of those applications and all of the components of those things. So she'll be a very direct person that you'll want to interact with to make sure that everything's coming in on time and in order, and we'll be there with any questions that you may have.